Have you ever thought about the amount of money that you spend on candles? The amount of money that I spend on candles, it may seem a little bit ridiculous, but being able to create my very own, priceless. Today I'm going to teach you all how I figured out how to create my own soy fragrance candles, allowing my apartment to smell exactly the way that I want. And it's very cheap. Before proceeding though, you should know that there's going to be an oven and a burner used in this process, so make sure you are capable of using them. The first thing that you're going to need to do for this process is to acquire the materials. Depending on how you're going to create your own soy candles, there are different materials used for different methods. In order to follow along with this step-by-step candle making guide, you're going to need the following materials. You will need 1 bag of soy container candle wax, which can be purchased very easily. You're also going to need the candle containers, which the wax will be poured into, creating the final product. In order for the flame to stay lit, you're going to need to purchase the wicks as well. These ones came with it inside, so we'll be able to skip a step during this video. Candle fragrance oil and dye are good additives, however they are not required. You're also going to need a pouring pot, as well as a double boiler. For the double boiler, using just a basic cooking pot will suffice, but you may want to use something like a cookie cutter to separate the two pots in order for the heat to be dispersed evenly. You will also need something to stir the wax with, as well as some paper towels in case you make a mess. So the first step would normally be to preheat the oven to 170 degrees. This is the step that we are able to skip because of the wicks being attached to the containers already. What you would normally do though is put the containers inside the oven to keep them warm, which we can still do so that it doesn't create any jump lines or air bubbles in the candles when you pour the wax in. The next step is to get the wax prepared. This is done by taking the bag of soy candle wax and weighing out the amount that you're going to need. This step should be done carefully if you're trying to create an exact amount of candles. However, if you're not so concerned with the amount of candles you're going to make, the wax can just be measured by eye. Once you have the correct amount of wax that you're going to use, you need to put the wax into the pouring pot. What I like to do in order to not make a mess is to use a separate scoop to put it into the container. There it is. In order to properly heat the wax, using a double boiler is the best solution. I tend to use a cooking pot filled with around 1 inch of water, which can create a double boiler effect. If you have an extra cookie cutter laying around, this can be placed at the bottom of the cooking pot in order to create a space between that and the pouring pot to ensure that there's no heat being exerted in a specific area. This step is optional, however, depending on what materials you have available. Once the pouring pot is inserted into the water, the wax now must be heating the candle wax to the correct temperature is an important step. Otherwise, it can change the consistency of the wax. In order to heat it to the correct temperature, you must turn the burner on. You're supposed to bring the wax to a temperature of about 170 degrees. Now, in order to do that properly, the water must come to a boil. However, you don't want it boiling too much. A rolling boil would be the correct temperature that you're looking for. While you're heating up the wax, you can move forward with the other steps, but making sure that you still pay attention to the wax, checking the temperature regularly. So if you choose to put fragrance oil and dye into the wax must be a correct temperature of 170 degrees. It will be in a liquid state at this step in the process. When measuring out the fragrance oil, this can be done based off how strong you want it to smell. A good rule of thumb for soy candles is to have between 0.5 and 1.7 ounces per pound of candle wax. For the average candle maker, they will use around 1 ounce of fragrance used. This can easily be measured by using a tablespoon, which is roughly half of an ounce. This is also a good opportunity for you to add the dye, which can be stirred in the same way as the fragrance oil. When adding the dye and oil, be cautious because there is no way to take it out once it is added. Also, keep in mind that the liquid will appear darker when it is warm than when it is cooled into the container. Once these steps have been completed, the next step is to remove the candle wax from the double boiler. Be careful not to burn yourself, usually by using an oven mitt to protect your hand. Once again, do not get the hot wax on your hand. Use paper towels you gathered earlier to wipe off any remaining candle wax that is there. Once the candles have cooled, the next step is to cut the wick. You're going to do this to your own desired length. However, it is recommended that you cut it around a 1/4 inch from the top of the candle wax. However, this is not a necessity. Make sure that the wax has cooled completely first, otherwise it could create an unwanted space around the wick. You have now completed this guide to creating your own soy candle. Who would have thought that making a candle could be so easy? Just think about the amount of money that can be saved from creating your own soy candles instead of having to purchase those extremely overpriced ones from the mall. I hope that this guide has made it easy for you to create your first soy candle and allowing you to create many more in the future.